Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. Former U.S. Representative, former judge, great friend of mine. It's Ted Poe. Ted, how are you? Good to see you.
Doing great. Good to see you, Joe.
You're one of the preeminent experts on the Constitution I know. You're a former judge, former U.S. representative. You always did a great job for us, and I love picking your brain about the Constitution. I want to get into birthright citizenship, and this is important now because President Trump signed like day one or day two, something like that, the end to birthright citizenship. We are the only country on the planet where you can show up illegally and just drop a kid, and suddenly the kid is a citizen of the country. When we go back and see the argument about the 14th Amendment, and again, as you've educated me over these years, 13, 14, 15 were about post-slavery, about never do slavery again. Former slaves and Native Americans are, in fact, American citizens if they were born here. It wasn't about foreign nationals showing up and having a baby. To that point, there was a senator named Howard in Michigan that said we've got to add this subject to the jurisdiction thereof in there to make it clear that this isn't about bad guys coming here and having kids. Yet somehow it's been misinterpreted to mean that if you're born here, you're a citizen here. So what is your take on this? Is there truly in the 14th Amendment a broad sense of anybody has a baby here and they're a citizen?
No, absolutely not. And it was written exactly for the reason that you stated. It was to make citizens of Native Americans former slaves. And it not only gave citizenship to people born here, but it gave citizenship to people who were naturalized into the United States.
Right.
And that's what it covers. So it doesn't cover the situation where the left is going bananas saying if a person sneaks into the country illegally with the purpose of committing fraud against the United States,
right,
and having a baby, that child is not a citizen of the United States under the Constitution. It is a citizen according to the left, but it's not according to the Constitution. Why? Because that child is not, or the parent and the child are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They're subject to the jurisdiction from wherever they came. Right. Perfect example. Ambassador from Italy comes to the United States. Wife has a child in the United States. That child is an Italian citizen. Yes. It is not a citizen of the United States. And that has been the interpretation of the law in a broad sense. And the issue of if you're born here, you are automatically a citizen is not the question. It's if you are born here and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, yes, the United States, then you would be a citizen. So people are misinterpreting the Constitution. It right. doesn't say what they say it says.
I misunderstood it for a long time, too, because when you say subject to the jurisdiction thereof, my answer was, well, you are subject to the laws. If you're here, it doesn't matter how you got here. You are subject to the laws. But it was explained even better, and I think it was by the attorney Eastman, where he said, yes, you are subject to the laws here. Like if you break the law, you're going to go to jail. But you can't just go drive down the street. You don't have a driver's license. You can't just enroll in school, although we do have Plyer versus Doe, for some reason allows that. You're not really subject to the jurisdiction thereof. You're subject to the rules, the laws, and the bylaws and the values of where you came from. So it does make better sense to me now. Ted, let me ask you this. Why do you think they were so vague about it? Why not say in there, this is to make sure that slaves get their birthright citizenship. This is to make sure that American Indians get their birthright citizenship. Why leave it so broad to interpretation?
Well, I can't answer why they wrote it the way they did, but right. They put the caveat in there. Why did they put that in there? If it doesn't mean something, why is it there?
I'm with you.
It's there because it is a clarification of who have citizenship in the United States.
And by the way, this is big, Ted, this is big business. This is, the Chinese Communist Party, they are literally trafficking people across the border to have American citizens. We know that we've got people that show up in Laredo and Del Rio and Eagle Pass every single day just to have the baby, to say that this baby is now a citizen, and then mom and dad and grandma, chain migration happens. If you shut this down and stop birthright citizenship for those who break the law to come here, that whole industry goes away, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's all about the money. And what you mentioned about the child being born, our government says when the child is born here, it is a citizen of the United States. I disagree. It's not subject to our jurisdiction. But not only is the child a citizen, that child, and it's called an anchor child.
Right.
Our government says, well, let's let the mom stay. Well, let's let the father stay. Well, let's bring in all the family. And so it's about 9 people are brought in by our government because that child was brought in or was born here by a fraud perpetrated on the people of the United States. And we reward that conduct. Nothing about against the child. That's
right.
not the issue. It's
right.
the fraudulent parent that came in here. It's the governments that are paying their citizens to come to the United States and have children and make citizens of them. And now they're citizens of the United States. So it's a fraud that's been going on. And it's something that the United States just needs to interpret the Constitution
right.
the way it's written. And it's
you already have some stupid liberal judge in D.C. has already said that this is not going to. We can't allow this to stand. It's some sort of precedent in law that this is the way it is. Ted, this has to get to the SCOTUS, right? Get this to the Supreme Court and let the conservative court, the textualists on that court, read the document and tell us what it means.
That's right, and that's all Trump is doing is interpreting the Constitution the way it's written. That's what this federal judge and as you know, and most people know, why a judge in Seattle is making this decision, because
right.
In the federal court system, you got a lawsuit, you got the right person filing the lawsuit, you got a favorable leftist judge, right. You go file it in that court. You don't file it in Texas, you don't file it anywhere. You file it where you can find a leftist judge that will agree with
right.
those who want to, actually make citizens of people who are citizens of another nation.
So what happens? Let's say the Supreme Court gets it, and this is a lot of hypothetical, I get it, but let's say they get the case, and they're going to, Ted. I think you and I agree. They're going to get this case. And they decide, well, no, there is no right to a fraudulent entry, having a baby, and that baby becomes an American citizen. Do you then rescind the citizenship of everybody that happened before then? Or would it be anybody after that it doesn't apply anymore?
Well, they would make that decision. I am guessing here. They would say, here, from now on, it is not going to be retroactive. In other words, if a child was born here whenever and was from Ukraine, for example, they're not going to take that citizenship away from that child, but it'll be interpreted for future activity to put countries on notice that you can't do that anymore. And it's phenomenal, Joe, how many thousands of people are being born in the United States from foreign countries for the sole purpose of becoming a U.S. citizen and getting the rights and privileges thereof. And it's time in the Supreme Court, long overdue for the Supreme Court to interpret it. The courts in the past, there's only about 2 or 3 interpretations of this ruling, but I think the Supreme Court needs to interpret it from the way it's written. Why was the clause subject to the jurisdiction thereof put in the 14th Amendment?
And we can go back and see the argument about it, and it's kind of interesting. The debate spells it out. We have to put this in there to stop bad actors from taking advantage of us. It is Ted Poe, former judge, former U.S. representative, champion bowler. A lot of people don't know that. Ted Poe gets it done better than anybody. Hey, Ted, for about a minute and a half, I think it was 6 minutes, the Colombian president thought he had some leverage. It was kind of interesting. I remember the Northern Triangle saying no to Trump in the first administration. We're not going to let you repatriate anybody here. And Trump said, okay, how much money do we send you every year? We'll just stop sending it. And they allowed the flights to land. In Colombia, he thought he was Bobby Badass, and it took 6 minutes for Trump from the golf course to raise tariffs, to say we're going to revoke all your visas and no new visas for Colombians, and the Colombian president folded just that quickly. They're going to try him, aren't they? They're going to continue trying him because they got away with bloody murder under Biden for 4 years.
That's right. That we had the previous administration had no respect from anybody on earth, not just foreign leaders, but the people that lived in those lived throughout the world. They didn't respect the previous administration, and they didn't respect America or America's laws. And those days are over. The president has said, you take your people back. It's interesting that they send these people and expect them to be illegally brought into the United States.
Right.
But when we want to send them back to their country, they won't take their own people back. Now, what's wrong with that picture?
It's crazy.
And now they're going to go back. Mexico is another perfect example. They were balking at the issue of taking their citizens back. And they even said, well, you don't even send the people from Guatemala that came through our country. We don't want those illegals in our country either. and that's pretty ironic for a country that markets taking people from their country, sneaking them into the United States,
yes,
and sending all the money that they make back to Mexico, etc. So Trump is just going to be fair about the whole issue. And Joe, when you really don't have anything to do, why don't we go try to sneak into Mexico?
Okay.
Why don't we try to do that?
Yeah, that'll work out. Yeah, no, we'll sneak into Mexico. We'll buy some land there, and you open a business. You can't do any of that stuff there, but for some reason we're required to do it. Ted, I like this idea you have. You think that we should charge the countries where we're sending the people back for the flight?
Oh, absolutely. We give everybody most of the countries in the world, we give them money. We don't need to give them money to hate us. They'll do it for free. But Mexico is a perfect example. We give millions of dollars to Mexico. So every time we send somebody back to Mexico, let's take a little bit off of that money we give them, and that pays for the flight of that individual back to Mexico. Perfect. Or to Guatemala or to Spain or wherever. Just cut back the foreign aid enough to pay for the trip. They take their people back. We'll let them pay for their citizens coming back, but we'll docket them the amount from the foreign aid that we give them.
It is our good friend Ted Poe. We always appreciate the knowledge on the time, Ted. A little while ago, President Trump said he's going to open 30,000 beds at Guantanamo Bay and start sending illegal aliens there. Ted, if my brain's working right, and again, I'm not a lawyer. My mom says I could be. I think that you would support me being a lawyer.
Good for you.
But as my mom thinks I could be. But as I think about it, if they're here, they get due process. They get constitutional rights. If they're in Guantanamo Bay, they don't. Is that the difference?
That's the difference. That's why Guantanamo Bay was built as a prison. I've been there. I've seen the prison facilities. That's another issue. It's not what you would think a prison would be. But anyway, it's large. It's accommodating. It's where we have over the years taken terrorists that have been captured on the battlefield trying to kill Americans or come to America and kill us, and taken them and put them there and kept them there.
And then Biden let them all go, by the way, recently. He just let them all go.
Oh, yeah, of course. Let them all go. Send them back to where they came from. People who have killed Americans, responsible for the major terrorist attacks on the U.S., just let them go back home. And that's what has done. So now the place is vacant. Let's use it.
Is it a good idea? Would you support this if you were in Congress?
Yes, I would absolutely support sending them to Guantanamo Bay, because there are many of them that we should not really send back to their native land, because they'll let them go and they'll come back up here. So these people who have murdered and committed such atrocious crimes in the United States, if they're captured, I think that the Justice Department, NICE, and ought to figure out which ones are still a danger to the United States.
Right.
Send them to Guantanamo, but they're no longer a threat to us. And I think that'd be money well spent.
Former Rep, former Judge Ted Poe, always appreciate the time and the access. Let's talk about pardons. It appears in the Constitution that the president can pardon anybody for any reason that he wants. And I get that, and I don't necessarily want to change that. But do you think the intention was to preemptively pardon everybody? Because I know with Richard Nixon, that's sort of the precedent. That Gerald Ford because Nixon was not impeached. He was going to be, but he was not charged yet, and that trial didn't happen. So Ford says, let's just wipe the slate clean. And I think that's what Biden just used to pardon his whole damn family.
You said it exactly the way it happened.
But is it constitutional, do you think, to preemptively do this?
I don't know. I don't know that was in the intent of our founders to put that in there. A person could read that in there, but I don't think it was. Usually a pardon comes after the fact.
Yes.
You commit a crime, you go to jail, and then you're pardoned by the executive branch, whether it's the governor or whether it's the president.
Right.
And most people are not pardoned and all of that stuff. When Anyway, I don't think it was written for that purpose. And it shows to me just, I spent all my life in law enforcement down at the courthouse or the Palace of Perjury. And when a pardon always comes way after the conviction, mostly after the time is served. And now it looks like we're going to pardon these folks because we're a little nervous about the law now coming out to get them. It's like the old proverbs say, the guilty fleeth when no one pursueth.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they're doing. They look
guilty. He pardons them all back to Ted to 2014, which that was when he was still the vice president. He's basically pardoning himself for 11 years, really. So let me ask you this: now that they pardoned the J6 committee, all corrupt, they pardoned Fauci and Milley, all corrupt. If you were in Congress still, would you urge the chairman of these committees to still investigate all of it?
Yes, I would, and they have to. You can't try them, you can't indict them for anything, but you can sure find out what happened by having a pardon for their sins in the past or since 2014.
Yeah,
they don't have the right not to testify. They can be brought to Congress because what they say can't be used against them because they've been pardoned for all of that.
And if they refuse, they can be held in contempt.
Held in contempt for failure.
Yeah,
contempt of Congress for failure to answer the question.
I'd be a damn good lawyer, Ted. Admit it. I'd be a damn good lawyer.
You would be, but it'd ruin your reputation if you were a lawyer.
Well, one last question for Ted Poe. Always appreciate the time and the access, brother. Give me about 30 seconds on Ukraine. Suddenly, Zelensky wants a peace deal yesterday. He was happy to take our $200 billion under Biden, but now he wants it over. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, the chickens have come home to roost. I've always thought that the Ukraine situation was payback for the Biden crime family. We're sending money over there. Who happens to be our number one country in the world that we send money to? Number one is Ukraine.
Crazy.
And I think it's payback. That's my opinion about all of what took place there, Burisma and all of that stuff.
Is it over?
And I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Ukraine probably isn't. I don't know what they're doing, but right. I think that Zelensky has realized it's time to stop the war.
Yeah,
and I think he will. I think he'll come to the table, and Trump will work out a deal, and it'll be. Both sides will not like it. That's why it probably will be a good deal. But it's time for the killing to stop on both sides.
100%.
Thousands of people have died, and why have they died? Well, because some of the war hawks in the United States Congress, let's go to war. Let's go bomb the Russians.
And they keep on funding it.
Make a lot of sense.
No, it's sick. Ted, we're out of time. I appreciate you always getting it done. You have to do lunch soon. You keep talking about it, but we got to do it. It is Ted Poe. Go follow him at Judge Ted Poe. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Joe. Happy day.
All right, brother. All right, we're back after this. Stay right here.